If I asked you what park had the best coaster collection in America, what would you say? Cedar Point? Magic Mountain? Kings Island? Silver Dollar City? Busch Gardens? All great options, but I think there's one park that is often skipped over in this discussion that has a strong argument for best coaster park in America. Obviously, I'm talking about Hersheypark based on the title and thumbnail, so let's take a look at their lineup in terms of my least favorite to my favorite at that park to get an understanding of why I think their lineup is fantastic. Big thing to note, I will be talking about Wildcat and its future at the end of this little look at the rest of their lineup, since it's still currently up in the air. There are a few coasters at Hershey that I don't care too much for, and I think they can all be summed up into one category called the less intense family coasters. This encompasses 3 rides. The softball here is obviously Coco Cruiser. It's a kiddie ride, and it wasn't designed to be anything more than a kiddie ride. It serves that purpose wonderfully, I'm just not a kid, so this isn't for me. Trailblazer falls into this category as well. It also serves its purpose as a mine train style ride similar to Cedar Creek Mine Ride at Cedar Point. I'm usually not a big fan of mine rides as most of them have not aged too well, but I fully understand their importance for younger riders or riders not ready for thrill rides. The last coaster in this group for me is Wild Mouse. It exists, it's a wild mouse, and that's really all there is to say about it. None of these coasters in this tier are bad, and that's important to keep in mind. They just aren't my cup of tea personally. From this point, I'm going to start looking at coasters individually, starting with Super Duper Looper. While the layout isn't high thrill or anything like that, this is definitely one worth riding in my opinion. It has that classic Schwarzkopf inversion and a wonderful journey through that section of the park for the rest of it. This is a family coaster at heart and serves as the perfect ride as the first inversion type ride. With a top speed of 45 miles an hour, this coaster is more about the journey than the destination, and you know what? I appreciate that. Another great family coaster that Hershey packs into its lineup is Laugh Track. This serves one important purpose to the lineup in my opinion, introducing riders to going backwards. The layout is nothing entirely special, capacity's not great, and the spinning is inconsistent at best, but something about this ride left me very happy. I enjoyed my time on it, and I see it as a valuable asset to the collection that this park packs in. Up next we have Jolly Rancher Remix, which is certainly among, if not the best boomerang. These trains have vest restraints, which alleviates the really common issue with this model, headbanging. The theming is also a plus for this ride as it adds a new sense to the experience with the on-ride sense. I personally find the backwards vertical loop on boomerangs to be disorienting in a bad way, so they're not my favorite model, but like I said, this is probably the best one, take that as you will. Also, if I'm on that midway, there's a way better coaster I'd rather ride, but I'll get there, don't worry. Onto the wooden coasters that this park has. Lightning Racer is a strong racing coaster in the back of the park that I feel like kinda gets slept on a bit. Built by GCI, this ride is just plain fun. I mean, sure, it doesn't have the best airtime, it's kind of an out and back, and it doesn't have an insane top speed, but it does have 2 major things going for it: Millennium Flyer trains and track maintenance. Both of these things contribute to a wonderful ride experience that I would recommend to almost anybody, honestly. Comet has the edge over Lightning Racer in my opinion for one major reason: buzz bars. This ride has a surprising amount of airtime that you really have to experience to believe. Some people say it rivals Phoenix at Knoebels, and frankly I think that might be true. I actually rode both in the same day, and that was a pretty cool day. As the park currently stands, I think this is the better of the 2 Woodies in the park, but it's actually pretty close. Now it's time to look at the top 5 that this park has to offer, which means we're going to be talking about Great Bear. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I'm not a huge fan of B&M inverts, but like the rest of this park as a whole, I think this one specifically gets swept under the rug when it's actually quite unique and enjoyable. From the moment the lift chain lets go, riders experience the first unique moment on this ride with the pre-drop helix. Why is this a thing? Frankly, I'm not sure, but any variance from the B&M formula is good in my book. The drop after the helix is mostly straight, which is another point for this invert as most of them have curve drops. Other highlights of this include the 0G roll being phenomenal, park interaction being really cool with going over midways, the creek, and passing through Super Duper Looper, and strangely the B&M roar is a plus for me. Something about a coaster themed to bears having this roar just seems right. Besides that, the layout is fairly standard for an invert, except for the part where it has to be straight to go past Super Duper Looper, but that's forgivable in my book. A strong number 5 at this park in my opinion. Warning, my number 4 pick in the park might be controversial to some people. Putting Skyrush this low is reason for banishment to some, I'm sure, but I have a giant caveat with this one. I had only one ride on this in a middle row wing seat, and I haven't had a chance to give it a proper go. I expect it to rise in my rankings, don't worry. Also, the cable got stuck when we hit the brake run, so all non-essential functions stopped, meaning the program to lift the restraints a bit didn't work, and we got stuck for about 5 minutes on the brake run, stapled pretty hard. Anyway, with all that aside, this is an ejector machine. The layout is mostly this: insane drop, turn, airtime hill, turn, airtime hill, turn, airtime hill, well, you get it. Some people love this layout and would defend it until the end of time, and others find it bland. I fully believe that I could come to love this ride after I get a back row wing seat, but for now it remains at a comfortable number 4 in the park for me. Number 3 is straight up one of the most underrated coasters of all time in my opinion. Smash a Gerstlauer Eurofighter with a B&M looper and a launchless Intamin Blitz if that was a thing, and what do you get? Awful capacity. I mean Fahrenheit. I genuinely do not understand why this ride isn't talked about more. It's wonderful. It packs in a surprising amount of positives and airtime, even featuring an ejector hill. The vertical drop is an astounding 97 degrees, and even the slogan for this ride is amazing. If you don't know, the slogan is 97 degrees and dropping. It's a great pun that plays perfectly into the name Fahrenheit. I hope more people come to appreciate this ride in the future. It truly is great. The capacity sucks, just not enough to keep it away from being my number 3. Candymonium is either the most overrated or underrated B&M hyper, depending on who you ask. I like it enough to have it number 2 in the park personally. I see it as Mako Jr., a claim which I hope I can keep after I ride Mako in November. The 5-second airtime hill is great, and while the second half is trimmed, it really doesn't bother me that much. Would it be better without trims? Of course, but they exist and we can't do anything about that, so just enjoy it for what it is. The second half is certainly more mild, and calling back to Super Duper Looper, I don't really see this as a bad thing like most people do. I see it as time to enjoy the atmosphere of Chocolate Town and do some great park interaction around the Kisses Fountain. I think this ride is overhated, not overrated, and is strong enough to take number 2 at the park. Headed back to the same midway as Jolly Rancher Remix like promised, the Intamin accelerator at the back of the park entitled Storm Runner holds a very strong number 1 in the park for me, for now. Everything about this ride is just plain fun, from the hydraulic launch up the top hat, the airtime as you crest the top overlooking the rest of the park, the weird Immelman style Cobra roll loop that follows, the Heartline roll, and of course, the flying snake dive. It may be less than 30 seconds of ride time, but it's a riot the whole way. I think most people would agree that this is a strong coaster and certainly worthy of top 3 if not best in the park. Personally, the only thing that can improve this for me is different restraints, but they don't really bother me that much, so it's kind of a nitpick and not even a complaint. This ride is a safe number 1 in the park for me for now, but let's talk Wildcat. A quick recap for those who don't know, Wildcat is now a defunct coaster at Hershey. Built by GCI as their first ever project, to quote myself, this ride aged like warm yogurt. I personally never found it that painful, but the majority of people apparently found it awful, and as of the end of July of this year, it officially closed for good. The fate of this ride is technically up in the air, but it's essentially confirmed that RMC will be coming in to do their iBox magic to turn this once awful coaster into yet another masterpiece. For more information on this and for updates, I highly advise you check out Hersheypark Enthusiast, as he's kind of the go-to news source for this. With that said, I believe RMC Wildcat will probably become the best in the park, or at least top 2. Where does that leave this park? Well, with the addition of RMC Wildcat in 2023-2024, I dare say Hershey will have the strongest top 5, really top 6, but nobody counts that way, in the country. Their collection is so vast, and though they only have 14 coasters compared to Cedar Point's 18 for example, the heavy hitters at Hershey last longer into the lineup than they do at Cedar Point. Simply said, I see Hershey arguably having more return value as a park. I say that having visited Cedar Point at least 15 times this summer and only Hershey once, but that's strictly because of where I'm located. I'm extremely interested in the future of Hershey as they are still an independent park, so they have less overhead to consider and can expand at the pace that's best for them with the land they have. Speaking of land, Hershey is 1/3 the size of Kings Island and essentially has as many coasters and is the same size as Cedar Point and packs a heavier top tier in my opinion. So where does Hershey rank in terms of parks for me? On paper, definitely top 3. Cedar Point and Kings Island are more special to me, though I think they need to be afraid of Hershey's projected growth. For now, I'm going to slot it in at a strong number 3, but that gap is very small. This park is heavily underappreciated and underrated in my opinion, but I'd love to hear what you think in the comments. If you made it this far, thank you so much for the support. Liking and subscribing helps me a ton with the algorithm, so I would appreciate those. I'm Josh from Station Wait. Have a great day.